Before I start, I want to thank the Committee on Women and Gender and its chair, Jane Hatter, for their invitation to give this lecture, and my two respondents, Suzanne Cusick and Rena Roussin, for their willingness to engage with my thoughts. It's an honour and a privilege to be with them and you. And again, before I start, I want to give a content warning that some of the issues and language you'll hear may present challenges. I'm very sorry not to be with you in person, but my uncertainties over safety were grave enough to keep me from travelling. I'm even more honoured to be giving this lecture in the 50th anniversary year of the first woman, Janet Knapp, to be elected president of the AMS, and the 50th anniversary of the formation of the Committee on the Status of Women. Knapp's announcement in the 1975 newsletter reads, "You will see that a committee to examine the status of women in the profession has been established." One member of the group sagely remarked, "Finding out about the status of women is bound to tell us something about the status of men." Indeed, Janet, indeed, that was certainly my experience of serving. I have to say, though, that the original title for the committee, The Status of Women, should be giving us all pause for thought right now. We might have thought that the question of who gets to be a woman or what or who a woman gets to be had been settled. And yet, here we are. Writing this lecture has been a strange and uncomfortable process. I knew I wanted to talk about the crisis in feminism and what we as musicians and musicologists can say to our audiences, students and readers. I'm enraged by iniquity and the lack of social justice, by the emotional, intellectual and physical violence enacted by those in power on those they would seek to disenfranchise, oppress or deny. And I'm baffled by how feminism, my go-to ideology for most of my 63 years, could be failing so badly. And yet, 30 years after completing my PhD, I still live with such crushing imposter syndrome that I'm always in fear that what I say will be under-theorised and basic. But more than that, I'm aware that I'm taking up space and that my experiences as a UK resident, borderline boomer, second to third waver, cis het wasp musicologist obsessed with Renaissance nuns and girls who sing pop might not resonate with all of you. And yet I'm in a good position to speak up, no longer employed, in no immediate financial distress, and importantly, aided by technology that allows me to speak from afar. As a retired academic, I have very few platforms at my disposal, so I had to take the opportunity when it arose. I wanted to speak to the moment, and yet the moment keeps changing. Many of the gains of the feminist movement have been and are being eroded, first slowly and then alarmingly fast, along with what Angela McRobbie calls the cross-border solidarity with anti-racist, anti-ableist and pro-LGBTQIA+ activists. As conscientious feminist, I have been racking my brain to understand what I can do. Back in the spring, in my rage and bafflement, I had thoughts about historical feminist musicology or feminist historical musicology and how it can reveal or even deploy feminist killjoy tactics. But as spring turned to summer, rage turned to horror. I'm too tired to rehearse why here. We all know why. And watching the demands on feminist energy exponentially increasing, I found myself thinking more and more about the crises of care and exhaustion. And then I got thrown a lifeline. Call her serendipity, call her my archive angel. Who knew she did abolitionist trans feminism as well as Renaissance musicology? But non-musicological friends from either side of the pond unexpectedly threw me some new theory that I found transformative. I hope my white boomer ass is up to the job, so here we go. Sarah Ahmed describes the feminist killjoy in her 2017 Living a Feminist Life. To be a feminist killjoy is to question at the expense of comfort, to probe institutions and their modi operandi, be they organisations, academic networks or intellectual frameworks, and to speak up when and where injustice, oppression or violence occurs. The Killjoy Manifesto requires an ongoing and willful refusal to identify our hopes with inclusion within organisations predicated on violence. Killing joy is not about violence, though. It's about being willing to be the one who kills the mood by not laughing at sexist jokes, or who destroys the veneer of institutional harmony by not settling for what MLK called obnoxious peace. Ahmed first proposed the Feminist Killjoy in 2010 when she published an article called Feminist Killjoys and Other Willful Subjects. It appeared in a special issue of The Scholar and Feminist Online titled Polyphonic Feminisms Acting in Concert. The editors wanted to probe the ways a multiplicity of voices can coexist, albeit messily, and point towards new methods of rethinking and envisioning the complexities of feminisms and movements for social change. Feminist voices do coexist. Sometimes they are radically dissonant, though, sometimes eerily almost consonant but set to a different temperament. This polyphonic noise is rich and strange. Liberal, neoliberal, intersectional, libertarian, black feminism, evangelical feminism, popular feminism, post-feminism. But inasmuch as they have labels, they have also become discourses that may or may not work to advance the fundamental societal change we once assumed was feminism's goal. Jilly Boyce Kay recently reminded us of Nancy Fraser's warning from 2013 of how feminist discourse has become detached from the feminist movement in a way that is compatible with neoliberalism rather than the socialism she deems essential for gender justice, an uncanny double that feminism can neither simply embrace nor wholly disavow. Kay calls the 2020s version of this phenomenon reactionary feminism, which displays a deep disdain for collective action, social hope, and feminist utopianism. It is, she says, above all, profoundly fatalistic. She locates it in the way sexuality and intimacy have been commodified, in neoliberalism's alienation, inequality, and severing of social bonds, and in the dismantling of feminist socialist dreams. She sees it articulated in the posts of influencers like The Wizard Liz and in the pink pill online world of the female dating strategy, whose Spotify playlists repurpose tracks like Janelle Monáe and Erykah Badu's Queen to energize women to break hearts and bank accounts, ditching low-status men for high-status ones whose ambition and drive makes them preferable as reproductive partners. Recognizing reactionary feminism for what it is can be helpful, even vital, in bringing our students and readers to an understanding of how music and media can use feminist tropes to support a neoliberal, ultimately misogynistic, even eugenicist agenda. The division between reactionary feminism's discourse and practice is stark, but it still requires patience, commitment, and compassion to articulate, and to instill the critical skill set needed to recognize it for what it is. The academic feminist killjoy should have no hesitation in doing this. Ahmed calls this kind of recognition the feminist killjoy's hammer, saying, "We hammer away at the world by noticing how it is made. We bring what has receded into the background to the front in order to confront it." However, embedded in this relatively straightforward deployment of killjoy practice are terms that are themselves barely noticeable, but which contain multitudes: patience, compassion, and commitment. What if we take a killjoy hammer to them? These three qualities are necessary, if not sufficient, to the burden that Jennifer Nash and Samantha Pinto call the feminist imperative of care. Their recent intervention in an article titled On Exhaustion Towards a Post-Care Feminism notices how the relentless demands of academia combined with the everyday work of feminist care sucks out life force, erodes, wears down, and not just because of capitalism or in spite of it, but because life, living, caring, and just the business of having a body is exhausting, too tired to give any fucks. I can only briefly touch on this essay, but it's open access, so I urge you to read it and sit with the discomfort it brings to almost every aspect of feminist thought, particularly its critique of the litmus test of proper intersectionality that uses care as an alibi and takes exhaustion as both its price and the symptom of everything it's not. It calls for a maintenance feminism that keeps the lights on but refuses to make care a necessary sacrifice to the altar of feminism as an unquestioned, energizing good. It looks to how radical feminist and queer spaces ungender care away from the dullness and monotony of feminist exhaustion, and the authors articulate a need to find solidarity or at least commonality with women with whom they might otherwise have had nothing in common, such as white, mid-20th century middle-class women who knew nothing of black feminist struggle, but who were exhausted nonetheless, as folks building within a system that is always structurally, conceptually, practically exhausting and meant to exhaust us in often very basic ways. Which brings me to the last two frameworks that have me thinking about where feminism goes from here and how we might, as educators and musicians and agents in the world, find some way of managing spiritual and physical exhaustion, of renewing our psychic armour and helping those around us do the same. Nat Raha and Micah van der Drift's 2024 Trans Femme Futures sets out their vision of future solidarity based on an ethics of generosity, in which the importance of Angela Davis's identity based on politics rather than politics based on identity is foregrounded. Unlike some other black trans theorists, they insist on confronting complicity, our inescapable entanglement with institutions and systems. Embracing complicity allows an understanding of at least part of what makes feminism so exhausting in both our academic and secular lives. But complicity is also a vital, piercing tool for historians, as it draws attention to our desire to find meaning and connection in the past, and warns us of the danger of taking too narrow a perspective. Deborati Sanyal summarises the meanings and utility of complicity in her work on Holocaust memory in French and Francophone culture. The Latin root of complicity, complicare, to fold together, conveys the gathering of subject positions, histories, and memories. The recognition of complicity, of our place in a historical fold, but also of the folds that bring diverse histories into contact, is a challenging task. It requires us to consider our sometimes contradictory position within the political fabric of a given moment, as victims, perpetrators, accomplices, bystanders, witnesses, or spectators. And while she notes that an awareness of complicity can sometimes lead to resignation or even indifference, it can also become a form of commitment that can serve as a catalyst for ethical and political action. Ahmed, Nashin Pinto and Raha and van der Drift all acknowledge that we must reckon with our histories in and relationships to political, social or educational institutions, even if we fundamentally disagree with their politics or policies or behaviours. It's hard work and sometimes painful. But we can do it with humour. As Ahmed says, to be a feminist killjoy is not to be positioned above or beyond what you question. Roxanne Gay's Bad Feminist loves rap and pink. Raha and van der Drift talk about queer femmes who play with racialised gender, laughingly framing this practice as being a bad femme. This is a playful articulation of disidentification, what Norma Alarcon called a multiple voice subjectivity lived in resistance to competing notions for one's allegiance or self-identification. In using disidentification alongside complicity as an analytical tool, I am mindful of the potential for appropriation. Saruchi Tapa-Bjerkert and Medina Tlostanova insist on its theoretical grounding in minoritarian resistance and are wary of its use by empowered European feminists like me, so I'll be careful. One of my favourite UK podcasts is The Guilty Feminist, which does a nice take on complicity. The host invites her guest to say, "I'm a feminist, but," and then confess something like an addiction to Love Island or an appreciation for the Hot Priests calendar. I think it's time for an illustrative musical interlude from that podcast featuring Grace Petrie, a lesbian feminist protest singer, singing about her complicity in the capitalist form of the music business in a preview to her new show that narrates her activist exhaustion.
And I had a funny gig in November of last year. I was in North America, I was in Canada, and in the middle of my show, in the interval of my show, the results of the US election were called. Yeah. what a fucking vibe killer, right? So I had to do the second set, and somebody said to me, someone said to me at the end of the show, we need you now more than ever. We need you to give people hope, and that is what this song is about. 2025, what a time to be alive. The nuclear war seems imminent, the planet can't survive. The workers struggle evermore while the rich accumulate, while turning us against ourselves by spreading far-right hate. Compassion and protection are met with broad rejection, and every election seems a conclusion foregone. Society unwinds along bigoted fault lines. My mental health declines, and I confess I'm struggling to go on. And the only answer that I get are the words, I think I feel a song coming on. At least we'll have more protest songs, they tell me. From all this tragedy you can make sense, as if I'm salivating over my guitar at these most terrible events. We need protest songs now more than ever, with utterly no evidence they claim. Frankly, so far they've had no impact whatsoever, but let's try it all the same. So if the headlines are depressing, if society's regressing, if we face a battle simply to exist, when it's darker than December, there's one thing you must remember: Grace Petrie's gonna do well out of this. If you're losing sleep over Earth's devastation, that for sustaining life it won't be fit, console yourselves, GP, well, she's fucking making a killing off this shit. Oh, fucking hell. Oh, it's also new. 1 minute. And if you worry for our environmental future, I mean, the bar's on the floor, thank you. If you worry for our environmental future, the climate change has surely gone too far. I'll be sipping from my bottle of kombucha, washing down my caviar. 'Cause as the rainforest is burning, my investment is returning. So though I sympathise with eco-activists, as the polar bears are sinking, you best believe I'm thinking Grace Petrie's gonna do well out of this. Well, I hope I know it by August. That's the real test, isn't it? Well, I can't tell you that it's escaped my notice. Misogyny's having a renaissance. We've got a bloody madman for a POTUS. Handmaid's Tale is what he wants. Indoctrinated influencer trad wives want the good white Christian men in charge. British people vote consistently for bad lives, so get ready for Farage. But before you start your whining, well, there's a silver lining. 'Cause even though I'm no misogynist, but if fascism's in fashion, well, it's time for me to cash in. Grace Petrie's gonna do well out of this. Oh, if the nuclear war is coming, I'll be there and I'll be strumming. Need a soundtrack for the shooting. Anyone got a rhyme for Putin? Humankind's annihilation makes for great content creation. Grace Petrie's gonna do well out of this. Heard we're heading for a recession, better book that studio session. One more album full of bitching just might build me a new kitchen. If your optimism fading, that's the currency I trade in. Grace Petrie's gonna do well out of this. Oh, I'm rubbing my hands together at this global extreme weather. Civil liberty suspension just might build me an extension. Yeah, Grace Petrie, oh, she's cleaning up completely. As we slide ever more into the abyss, Oh, Grace Petry's gonna do well out of this.
Of all the fault lines along which society is unwinding, to use Petry's words, one that causes me day-to-day anguish is the status of trans people, seeing harm visited on friends and colleagues and watching friendships and professional relationships unravel because of it. Like Raha and Van der Drift, I want to embrace an ethics of generosity and desire solidarity based on politics, not identity. So I wanted to create a historical fold around one of the hot issues of this crisis, single-sex spaces. A decision by the UK Supreme Court in April 2025 has brought an interpretation of the Equality Act 2010 in direct confrontation with the Gender Recognition Act 2004, causing confusion, alienation and outright danger to trans and non-conforming people ever since. The UK Equality and Human Rights Commission's draft guidelines have made things even worse, particularly in respect of single-sex spaces, services and groups. It's a mess, but a familiar mess to many of you. In Theorising Complicity, Sanyal invokes Marianne Hirsch's concept of explicitly feminist connective histories, which can create a palimpsest from historical moments that is reparative rather than comparative. I want to think about how women have made music in single-sex spaces. Are there articulations of refusal or exhaustion or solidarity? And how can such a connective palimpsest be reparative? And does creating it help us say no to violence? I have spent many years thinking about 16th century nuns whose lives were regulated around daily musical engagement. This happened in a single-sex space that was externally determined and controlled in ways we would recognise these days as carceral. Once a woman entered a convent, there were very few circumstances in which she could ever leave. In political terms, nuns contributed to the reproduction of the dominant social form of patriarchy, willingly or unwillingly, simply by being nuns. But there were times when they made music outside the liturgical structure, in contexts and spaces that were explicitly beyond male control and even male experience, because men were not permitted to break enclosure. One such context was the ricreazione spirituale, spiritual recreation, a loose term encompassing creative performance that marked times of community celebration, mirrors of the kinds of performances that occurred in the secular world beyond the convent walls. In the Biblioteca Estense in Modena, there is a manuscript of 8 convent recreations written in Florence in the 1580s by the Vallambrosan nun Suor Annalena Aldobrandini. She calls them veglie, a word that can mean vigil or wake, but here it means a nighttime party, perhaps during the time between Compline and Matins when normally the nuns would sleep. They are not plays, more like elaborate skits. Many contain costume descriptions and scene directions, and the manuscript is clearly compiled with the intention that the productions could be mounted again either in the same convent or elsewhere. The recreations were mostly performed by the younger members of the community who got to try on gendered and morally weighted behaviours in a private space. They often had a didactic turn, imparting wisdom about convent life that would not appear in a catechism or the Jesuit spiritual exercises. I might even say that by recycling, reinterpreting and remaking materials from the outside, layering cultures and identities to which the nuns both belong and never will belong, Suor Annalena's playfulness resonates with disidentification. My favourite is the veglia of Appetito disordinato and Ragione naturale. In it, the king, unbridled appetite, and the queen, natural reason, address the audience and each other, trying to attract followers. Destiny invites the audience to pull little slips of paper out of her purse, on which are written short epigrams for each nun to read aloud. This gives them a personal quality, virtuous or not, that allocates them to one of the 2 courts. The queen instructs her servant prayer to sing a devotional song, but the king's servants, idleness, pleasure and dalliance, mockingly dance to it. The courts take refreshments separately. Reasons gets modest food, tiny pastries, wafers, aniseed sweets and sugared almonds. Appetites get greasy food like roast meat and erbolato, a mix of cheese, eggs and greens. In the middle of this, free will steps in and reminds all the nuns that destiny is irrelevant. God has given free will to everyone so that they may choose which path to follow, and they should remember that death can come at any time. There is so much going on here. First, the rulers' genders reverse the prevailing cultural norm, that is, that women are prone to sinful excess and men are the only sex capable of reason. Queen Reason's followers stress more than once that her path is hard and tiring, caring for others and subjugating the self. Exhaustion is even explicitly given her own virtuous epigram. On the other hand, King Appetite's appeal is pretty attractive, and his court does seem to have all the fun. And given that nuns were hungry most of the time, why would you not want to tuck into some protein? There is also a very clear sub and not so sub text of sex ed for horny teenagers that runs through the whole thing. You want to get it on? We understand, but you do so at your own risk. If death comes to get you and you are on the path to hell, it's your own damn fault. The Velia is framed by musical numbers. The king and queen's courts each sing an extended song with a refrain, and Free Will sings her speech in a musical formula used for the recitation of poetry. There is no need for notation in the manuscript, as Suor Annalena indicates the names of the tunes to which the opening songs are sung. This is not her invention. It's a very common strategy for music creation, not confined to the Renaissance or to Europe, in communities that have no tradition of, need for, or limited access to notation culture. It may be significant that Suor Annalena uses a female-voiced amorous lament for the king's song and a male-voiced praise of the shepherdess at work for the queen. More curiously, the instruction for Free Will's recitation reads, "You can sing this as you want. We sing it alla ninfale." The Ninfale Fiessolano by Boccaccio tells the story of the seduction and rape of the nymph Mensula. It's explicitly erotic and definitely NSFN, not safe for nuns. But this seduction and rape aren't just any seduction and rape. Mensula's assailant, Africo, is a fresh-faced boy, and Venus helps him disguise himself as a nymph so that he can infiltrate Diana's community and win Mensula's affections. Mensula falls head over heel for this stranger when she triumphs in the hunt. But when the nymphs decide to go for a swim, Africo clearly can't keep his disguise up, so he reveals all, grabs Mensula, and then violently rapes her. She is mortified, but Venus briefly affects her judgment so that she consents to a second round, and it's this consensual sex that impregnates her. She flees in terror, rejecting Africo, miserable through shame and regret. Africo commits suicide through grief at rejection, and when Mensula's baby is born, so revealing she broke the rules by consenting to sex, Diana is furious and turns her into a river. I'm not saying Boccaccio's lesson is beware men who dress up as women and infiltrate single-sex spaces. Sanyal warns specifically against victim-centric comparative readings that ignore other perspectives. In fact, Boccaccio presents the rape, Africo's violence, and Mensula's pain as acceptable, even necessary, in the context of a broader narrative of the founding of Florence. But I don't think it's an accident that Suor Annalena uses the Ninfale as a model for free will speech. After all, it's not the rape that gets Mensula in trouble with Diana, it's the fact that she consents to the repeat. Now, I've been a feminist killjoy musicologist for the whole of my career, often manifesting in professional situations, such as the time I put a notice on my office door explaining that if I wasn't there on the dot at 9 a.m, it was because I, a single mother with a preschool child who could not get a place at the oversubscribed university nursery, had been denied a car park pass, while more senior male colleagues, either childless or with kids already at the nursery, were given one first time at asking. Devoting research time to convent polyphony was feminist and not intentionally killjoy, but it was intentionally reparative. It has been a musicological life goal to restore ownership of Renaissance polyphony to female voices. Our ensemble has become a woman-only space, straight, bi, gay, trans, non-binary, mothers and not mothers. When we started recording polyphony bro music like Josquin and Palestrina, we donned our metaphorical tin hats and waited for the bile, which, to be honest, never came, perhaps because we were beneath notice. So I wasn't prepared for a recording of anonymous music from a manuscript with no secure provenance to trigger my most recent and public killjoy moment after that recording was praised in the New York Times. The sequence of events thereafter, both in print and in private emails, was so predictable it was almost banal, although it sure didn't feel like it then. It followed in almost every detail another open access essay that I urge you all to read, Charlotte Lydia Riley's Male Historians Explain Things to Me, Masculinity, Expertise and the Academy. A quote from the essay struck such a chord that it remained at the top of my social media profiles for months. Silly woman, did you think this was about gender? Let me show you how you are mistaken. Before I was a musicologist, I was a freelance musician and during the 1980s a member of the UK campaign for nuclear disarmament. In those years, the US military maintained nuclear weapons at various sites in the UK, and we did what we could to protest, disrupt, and bear witness to what we saw as a grave danger to humanity. I was also part of the extended support network for the Women's Peace Camp outside the cruise missile base at Greenham Common in Berkshire. Greenham was also a single-sex space, but this was an internally imposed decision. By excluding men, the Greenham women actively refused to contribute to the reproduction of patriarchy. With distributed responsibility and no organisational hierarchy, camps proliferated in a way that allowed the women to gravitate into groups that manifested different modes of being. A strictly vegan camp, a camp that emphasised women-centred spirituality, a more hedonistic camp, and even a separated off, enclosed camp that allowed no male visitors at any time. Before elaborating this historical fold between the single-sex spaces of 16th century nuns and 20th century peace activists, I need to address the other meaning of complicity too. The nuclear disarmament movement in the UK was overwhelmingly white and was seen by many black British feminists as just another manifestation of imperialist privilege. A contemporary critique by Valerie Amos and Pratibha Parmar pointed out that while white Western women were hand-wringing over a theoretical future danger, women elsewhere around the globe were struggling for food, water and land. On the other hand, they noted that white women's experiences at Greenham had the potential to generate new forms of solidarity, since they were subjected for the first time to the terror of a coercive police force, a highly trained military, and the multifarious arms of the welfare state that made black women both unwilling and unable to participate in non-violent direct action. The debate within the camp about alignment with the black feminists of the King's Cross Women's Group eventually led to schisms, leaving Greenham with a publicly fractured history and obscuring its foundations in a multivalent solidarity. That's not for me to repair right now, but I do need to acknowledge it. With that caveat in place, I would say that the Greenham women were killjoys and music was one of their killjoy hammers. Chanting, keening and particularly song were extremely important to daily life and protest at Greenham. Listen to Peggy Seeger talk about how the women used singing and vocalising to unsettle the police monitoring them.
It was hot and it was July, must have been July or August. And so there's a whole bunch of us just sitting there, dum-da-dum, like sparrows on the wire. And we had this song we sang, you heard the song, Old and Strong. Yeah, so we're singing Old and Strong. She goes on and on and on, she's like a mountain, old and strong. And we're just sitting there just chanting this. And the police are laughing at us and funny. Then somebody started this, and I don't know who it was, but it was absolutely brilliant. And the drift was that one of us would be the leader, but not obviously. Somebody with a strong voice. You'd start humming, and everybody along the line would pick it up. And then this leader would change. And to any note, and the others would just get there as quick as they could. Oh, do you guys sing?
Yeah.
Do you sing?
Not Christine as much.
But you don't have to. Just hum. Da. Come on, hum it. Da. You see how quickly you get? So this was going on for probably 30 or 40 minutes. And there's these guys sitting in there, the police sitting in the back of their van, and it's open, you know. And they're very quiet listening to all this. And one of them gets out, and he comes over, he says, "How do you remember all that?" And I said, "No, we're making it up. We just make it up." And he went back, and he sat down, and they slammed the door of their vehicle. And then the vehicle began to rock, and they were singing da 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 da, and the vehicle was just going from side to side. And after a couple of minutes, they got tired of that, and it was also hot in there, and they opened up the back of it and sat there a while, and we're still going oh. It was an absolute hoot.
Were they trying to sort of compete with you? Or were they just trying to drown you out, do you think?
No, I don't know what they were trying. They were probably trying to say, well, we have songs too.
Yeah.
And it was sad in a way.
Yeah.
You know? It was sad.
One of the palimpsest alignments between our Florentine nuns and the Greenham women is the way they used pre-existing melodies for many of their songs. Anna Feigenbaum's analysis of the way Greenham women adopted specific repertoires as musical resources for reworking, such as Beatles songs and girl group songs like Do Ron Ron, emphasizes their tactical reading practices that simultaneously celebrated and critiqued women's place in the symbolic order of popular music. One might say something similar for Suor Anna Lena's use of gendered popular songs. But many other genres were used at Greenham, including nursery rhymes, music hall songs, folk songs, and even hymns. Like 15th and 16th century manuscript collections of women's spiritual songs, Greenham's original song sheets and songbooks had no notation. Unlike Suor Anna Lena's manuscript, they preserved their community's musical culture in a direct, unmediated way. Various iterations were compiled by hand and illustrated, and the sheets provided valuable instant bonding for newcomers and support groups. Eventually, a version with notation and chord symbols was made as a way of reclaiming the camp's female musical identity after the male Quaker composer Tony Biggin was commissioned to write an oratorio about the camp in 1985. But there were other reasons too. Songs that expressed lesbian or non-conforming sexualities, and the slippages between friendship and desire that were a feature of relationships at the camp, were desexualized or omitted altogether in collections and anthologies produced by outsiders. Singing together was a way of building community, demonstrating solidarity, reinforcing commitment, sharing affect, promoting the action, recruiting new supporters, finding laughter in adversity, and chronicling their daily lives and their interaction with police, soldiers, and the media. But it's perhaps this propensity for humour, along with their determination not to ascribe to a single narrative, that allowed a retrospective representation of Greenham women through their music to diminish them. Ken Russell's short documentary on British folk song, made in 1997, uses an obnoxious appropriation of disidentification that locates our Greenham Killjoys precisely in white, Middle England middle-classness, from the cut-glass accent of the interviewee to the sunny field, trivialising their action and dissociating them from the sexualities and politics they embodied, even while they are singing.
How about this bit of stuff? Hey! Mother Harwood! Is this a coincidence?
Greenham?
Greenham?
Greenham Common. What, cruise missiles? Oh, that was ages ago. I'm going back for a sing-song.
Folk song?
Protest song.
I smell trouble. Greenham, here we come! Now, why couldn't we have just driven in the main gate?
Traditional to break in.
Tell me.
New Year's Day, 1983, crack of dawn, 44 women, metal ladder, old stair carpet, oops, over the top.
Looks dangerous. Not so sure this is a good idea.
30,000 women thought it was.
Lead on, then. Well, so tell me about these two women we're going to meet.
Well, both were involved in the court case at the Supreme Court in America to take President Reagan to court. In fact, Chris King was thrown out of the court for breastfeeding.
Breastfeeding?
Breastfeeding. And we both spent a lot of time in prison. In fact, both of them had concrete poured on them when they tried to prevent a bunker being built at Bridgend in Wales. And they said, well, sit here and we won't let you pour the concrete. So they poured the concrete on top of it.
And they're still alive.
They're tough.
Well, lead on, quick.
Follow me. And this is where they stored the cruise missiles, and this is where they'd have launched them from.
Sinister-looking place, even on a summer's day. What made you come here? Medal for bravery?
I wasn't brave. I was frightened. I didn't bring up 3 children to have them end up dead shadows on a bloody wall somewhere.
You got a point.
Come on!
So you actually climbed up on top of this 60-foot silo when they were building it. What did you do when you got up here?
Danced.
Danced? You and who?
And sort of 40-odd other women.
40 other
Held
women.
hands.
Good. Then what happened to you?
Then they took me to prison.
Excellent. And what were these ladies doing?
This is Lynn Fort.
Well, please accept these. And you sang through all this, I gather. You were camped outside and you kept your spirits up and kept going away at the authorities till you...
We made a nuisance of ourselves.
You made a nuisance of yourself.
Yeah.
And what did you do for relaxation in the evening? Don't tell me. apart from that, the singing. Yeah, I know you sang.
Yeah.
So could you give us an example of one of the songs that kept you going?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Down at Greenham on a spree, financed by the KGB, dirty women sitting in the mud. Da, 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 da. Mostly vegetarian, except when we're devouring men. We're foreigners and other kinds of scum. Mr. Chenyenko supplies us with our vodka. Mr. Castro makes sure we're kept in dope.
Wish he would.
All the women here are outside agitators who can't see that Ronald Reagan brings us hope.
Brings us hope.
What a bunch of layabouts, don't know what it's all about. How we need deterrence for the best.
Da, 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 da.
Building fires and burning toast, bringing communism close, threatening the safety of the West. In the bushes, a cache of guns is waiting, with sealed copies of Karl Marx in plastic bags, while our children live in misery with rats and deprivation. But what can you expect from queers and hags?
Queers and hags.
Down at Greenham on a spree, financed by the KGB, laughing, singing, dancing in the rain.
Da, 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 da.
Nowhere signs of sacrifice, being good or being nice. Most of all, we're not accepting pain. For we're trying to be done with games and problems of hypocrisy, dishonesty and fear. So don't go getting shirty, 'cause it's us that's getting dirty. And because of us, we'll all be here next year.
Yay.
My final Killjoy reparative fold of music making in single-sex spaces focuses on a much smaller iteration, the Australian girl group The Sisters of Invention. I've written about the sisters before, but if they are new to you, they formed in Adelaide in the 2010s and are supported by the arts advocacy charity Tutti Arts. The Sisters are an all-female pop group determined to challenge society's preconceived ideas about who can be a pop star. They navigate a variety of physical and intellectual disabilities, but they insist that they should be seen and listened to as musicians first. Their songs, written with the assistance of a facilitator, upend the expected self-objectification of the female pop singer by reframing the meaning of their disabled bodies and the reality of disabled life. They came to international attention with their 2014 single, This Isn't Disneyland, a bubbly, banana-rama-tastic pop anthem with an infectious hook. They sing of what it's like to move in a world of lazy stereotypes, while also celebrating their collective interdependence and mutual care. The video demonstrates disidentification writ large. The glossy pop expertise of the audio is juxtaposed with a visual honesty expressing frustration and emotional exhaustion. Each singer is styled first as a demure Disney princess and then abruptly as her torn, ruined, confrontational, even destructive alter image. Any recourse to inspiration narratives or staring at difference is unwelcome. Blind Annika makes this point in the video by removing her glass eye, which stares back at the viewer from the palm of her hand. The sisters refuse passivity and infantilization, and Killjoy energy bursts from the screen, but the lyrics also mirror Raha and Van der Drift's ethics of generosity, a willingness to meet the audience where it is in its ignorance.
You learn something new every day. New every day, to the day that you die. I left school years ago, thought you should know. And although there's obstacles, struggles and falls, there's a brick walls. I'm not saying you're mean, but there are some things you haven't seen.
Raha and Van der Drift consider disidentification a tool for creating solidarity between trans and cis women, and I think this is what the sisters are after too. They are also explicit in their politics of solidarity. The video of their eponymous single claims the visual symbols of pop success: flash car, flashy fashion, striding confident posses and breakdancing. But the car is driven by a blind woman. The fashion is modelled by disabled and trans bodies. The striders are trans and non-binary. The breakdancers are disabled. One of the trans women in the video is Michael Ross, their musical facilitator and producer. The lavender ladies in the lyrics could be, of course, femmes, but they are represented visually by older women dressed in purple, the colour of LGBTQIA+ solidarity. The video comprehensively upends another ontological category. Theorists David Mitchell and Sharon Snyder once called disability the master trope of human disqualification, but here the sisters turn it into the master trope of human inclusion. They use the standard girl group matrix of womanhood, sporty, scary, posh, baby and ginger, and crip it to form their own new reparative rainbow coalition.
With the sisters, sisters, sisters.
There goes the canary again.
Sisters of invention.
There goes the canary again.
Are you ready to work? Are you ready to work? With the sisters, sisters, sisters.
There goes the canary again.
Sisters of invention.
There goes the canary again.
Watching the sisters is always cathartic for me. I feel relief from feminist exhaustion, a renewal of Killjoy energy, and a profound sense of gratitude and generosity. They are my antidote to reactionary feminism's fatalistic rejection of social justice, collective action and hope, not just because they are a certified bop, but also because they are proof of how on-the-ground community activism and a dedicated network of support can transform lives and fulfill potential. And because they remind me that while engaging with disability theory and activism has given rise to some of the hardest moments of my feminist activist life, those moments were possibly also the most transformative. When I first began reading disability theory and applying it in my scholarship, I got pushback. When I put my essay in sounding off up for the UK research assessment exercise, I was told my department didn't do music therapy and my essay didn't qualify as rigorous research. There is something about confronting ableism in an organisation that makes people defensive. I've been called tendentious, difficult, and once was accused of performative concern for disabled colleagues when trying to negotiate better accommodation and access to events. A cheap shot, if ever there was one, but unsettling because white boomer. But teaching disability theory to students and watching a class of 30 kids unfold their lives and embrace difference on a new level was incredible. And when the cool guys invited the neurodivergent loner to join their study group because they wanted to learn from him, it was even better than when the rockers signed up to my girl singers class because they wanted to support their girl singer when she wanted to write feminist songs. But mostly, I'm grateful for how disability studies helps us understand what it is to be human, complex, and mutable. Disability theory explains how the architecture of biological and social norms excludes and erases non-normative bodies and minds. AMS Killjoy handbook contains phrases that feel as apt for anti-ableist killjoys as they are for feminists. Survival of the fittest equals survival of those who fit. You notice worlds when they are not built for you. Those who don't fit the old forms need to create their own forms. And perhaps in this moment we can remember that disability justice does not require a person to be assigned disabled at birth or deny healthcare to someone whose disability is emergent. Being a killjoy feminist musicologist, academic, musician, teacher and organiser is exhausting. The pressure of care, of feeling responsible is immense because we know that even if our privilege is unequal, if we are here, then we have more privilege than those who cannot access this space. As Raha and van der Drift put it, to sustain collective learning is hard when people are tired and broken from the general state of oppression and violence and from having to be resilient all the fucking time. So we are all exhausted and all we can do is do it tired, as Nash and Pinto say. But let's not stop. As musicologists, we can apply and interpret the discourses of feminism, but when we act as feminists, we are part of an ongoing movement, and we are not alone. Ahmed says, we need to tell each other stories of different ways you can live, different ways you can be, predicated not on how close you get to the life you were assumed or expected to have, but on the queer wanderings of the life you live. We can hold each other without putting ourselves on hold. Thank you.